A team of 3 bounty hunters traveled in a spaceship bound for Earth, which spent 2,000 years uninhabitable. The yellow-haired girl is called Sunja and is in charge of the ship. The spiky-haired guy is Robert, and he is shocked when Sunja says that this is Earth. The 3 of them had not visited this planet before, but Captain Young knew that this place was still drenched in radiation and without any trace of oxygen. They decided to visit Earth because of an alleged high-value wanted criminal who hid there. It seems that there is also a high-ranking member of the Bloodthirsty gang. At least that's what Robert told Young. Hopes he's telling the truth. Robert says that the information was from when Hao Moon hacked into the beggar sex system. Sunja interferes in the discussion and says that entering Earth is a sentence. They're basically giving up on living. There's not even oxygen in the place. The captain knows she's right and asks if there's a way for a human being to live on Earth. Sunja is direct and says that if the person uses a first-rate radiation shield installed and a high-capacity internal power drive, maybe he can live 6 hours. Young asks if Robert is willing to risk his own life for the sake of the fugitive. The man becomes thoughtful and the two fight, but Robert is sure that the bandit will be found because Sunja detected a sign of life on Earth, so it's worth a try. At that moment, Sunja follows the coordinates and makes the landing on what was formerly known as Mount Hua. Young and Robert left the ship wearing radiation shielding. The 2 bounty hunters checked the place for signs of life on Earth, while Sunja took care of the ship. The only information the hunters had about Mount Hua is that it is the same place as the elders from the Martial Alliance. They call it a legendary shrine, but apparently they left the environment a mess of garbage. Anyway, the captain decides not to waste time and look for the fugitive who was hiding there. Suddenly she feels a vibration under her feet and says she found the place. So Young checks with Sunja if there is life underground. The girls use a communication radio, and it is soon confirmed that there is someone down there. The internal energy device in the hunter's waist is activated, and she channels the power into her hands. Soon the ground is pushed down and opens a huge crater. Sunja says she can still feel the sign of life, although he is weak. Robert thought it was better to have a ladder to enter the crater, but Young jumped without thinking twice and he was forced to follow it. The two land on the ground to find a giant door with notes in a different language. The message was from someone named Lee Machin. This person wrote that the world imprisoned him with esoteric teachings because they were afraid of him. So anyone who finds the place should know that they won't come out alive if they awaken it. Robert and Young didn't decipher the script. Sunja did it for them and said that it was a language used about 2,000 years ago. She adds that basically the message is saying that they didn't come out alive if they do. Robert celebrates when he finds the threat because it means that the bandit is there, but the captain thinks it might be someone else. After all, the message was written in a language from 2,000 years ago. The person is not even alive at that point. Anyway, Young decides to check with his own eyes and opens the big door. Robert follows behind. The hunters soon find a figure sitting at the top of a ladder. There are hairs everywhere, and it is difficult to identify if it is a person. Young gets close to the figure and looks closer, while Robert stands at the foot of the ladder and asks if it is a human being. The captain has an idea and touches the nose of that thing. It is the only place she finds that has no hair. At first, nothing happens, and they are convinced that it is a corpse. But suddenly a purple lightning bolt envelops the body of the figure and red eyes appear. The next moment, an explosion takes over the place. The captain is thrown away. The explosion is so strong that Sunja sees her from space. She checks if her companions are alive, but Robert and Young do not answer. The huntress does not give up and continues to call them. The captain finally regains consciousness and finds Robert lying on the ground next to her. The girl becomes immobile when the figure approaches and asks in a strange language who she is. Young does not answer, but the figure asks if a martial artist capable of challenging him has finally been born. The captain does not understand a word and activates the translation mode in real time. At that moment, the strange villager says he will finish her off. The girl goes into despair, realizing what he means. So with no other alternative, she sends a powerful missile to the monster. The underground was overloaded with yet another explosion. Soon the smoke dissipated, and he remained standing without any injuries. Unfortunately, the captain was running out of internal energy to continue. The cave monster recognizes the skills she used and said that the invaders were bandits who came to steal her martial arts. In that case, he will have to finish her off. Suddenly, the man floats surrounded by purple energy and faints when he is about to make his attack. Young looks incredulous and asks what happened. Robert stands up holding the injured shoulder and assumes that the man passed away after being exposed to all this radiation without a protective field, but Sunja warns him that he is alive. His breathing and pulse are normal. He just fainted from internal energy depletion. She also commented that his stomach was empty. The hunters were surprised to realize that the man fainted from hunger. The scene changes to a few minutes later, when the captain took the man bound in tapes to the ship. Robert was against bringing this monster to the safe place they had. The answer is simple. Young was sure that this unknown man would be worth a lot of money, An awkward silence hangs over the bounty hunters. The captain asks what is the most valuable cultural heritage today. Sonja immediately replies that it is the ancient martial arts. The closer to the original, the more valuable it is. Young refers to the unknown man as a hairball and says that it is likely that he is an ancient martial artist, at least 2,000 years old, in which case this hairball must be an unimaginable grandmaster of S rank or higher. Robert says that this means that they have won the lottery, but he is afraid that the great martial artist will wake up. The captain reassures him by saying that she used a celestial silkworm thread, used for spaceship repairs. Not even the head of the Shoal sect can cut it. When the girl finishes talking, something happens. She looks back in fear when she hears the noise of tape tearing. The unknown man managed to cut the wires and was now loose on the ship. A murderous aura emanates and he threatens to finish off the thieves. Robert shouts that he knew this was going to happen. Yang takes the position preparing for the attack. Suddenly, the hunters look incredulously at the scene in front of them. Sonja calmed the man down with a large plate of protein. He starts eating and forgets about the enemies. The hunters are in shock and ask how Sonja thought of it. She just replied that sausages are the best food for a hungry animal. After a few minutes, the man finally agreed to a peaceful conversation. He understood that those people were not grave robbers, but bounty hunters who accidentally woke him up. And now this is the world 2,000 years after the time he was imprisoned. He also understood that the world became uninhabitable and humans went to live in heaven. The captain knows that the man will have difficulty assimilating everything, but that's basically it. The humans decided not to allow any weapons other than martial arts, including nuclear weapons. The unknown man is surprised and asks with curiosity what the current era is called. Young replies that they are in the year 1105 of the galactic calendar. The guy is confused. So she says he should thank him for waking up 2,000 years later, when everything is already resolved. The man hits the table with his fists and gets angry. He doesn't think he owes gratitude to the humans who destroyed the Earth itself. At that moment, the three hunters pointed out the window. The man looks at the planet getting further and further away, and is informed that that ball is where he lived. Young explains that the Earth is totally destroyed. The man refuses to believe that he lived there, because he didn't think that planet Earth was round. The captain doesn't believe that he heard something like that. Suddenly, everyone feels a bad smell circulating through the environment. Young holds his breath while suggesting that the stranger take a shower and cut his hair too. The guy doesn't even know what bathing means. He is forced into a room with several showers. The hunters wait outside and hear the man cutting his hair. Robert admits that he is afraid of what might come out of the bathroom. Plus, he thought they shouldn't force the man to cut his hair. Suddenly, the bathroom door opens, and the man who comes out is completely different from what they imagined. The stranger is our protagonist. He gets new clothes and is calmer after understanding that he could no longer live on Earth, but the sight still scares him. Suddenly, Yang squeezes his cheek asking how old he is, not to mention the years of hibernation, obviously. The hunter's first stop is at the Wild Inn, which is also in the space, as well as all the other properties. It is there that the protagonist has his next meal. But Robert was not comfortable and asked if the brat was going to eat what he hasn't eaten in 2,000 years. While Robert and Sonja take care of the boy, Captain Young is in the meeting room, talking to the guardian of the inn, named Wang. The man learned that she wanted to find a rich and strong broker for an extremely valuable item. He refers to Young as a flaming devil and questions what such an important item this is. The captain soon asks how much a complete collection of 2,000-year-old martial arts manuscripts would be worth if they were all originals and S-ranked. That question left Wang open-mouthed, and a silence hung over the meeting room. The guard answers for the boss and says that if she is telling the truth, then the item is incredibly valuable. Wang interrupts him and says that it is actually worth 0 credits. The guard tries to understand if he heard correctly. The manager is direct and says that it is impossible for simple hunters to have found an item on their own that could buy 1 planet. In this case, he imagines that he is being deceived and orders the captain to be expelled from the inn. Young quickly returns to his companions and does not find Sonja. Robert says that the girl went to buy supplies, then questions how the conversation went. The captain lies, saying that it was good and that the manager will contact you when he finds someone interested. At that moment, Young realizes how much food the protagonist ate. She would finish him right there, if it weren't for the money. Suddenly, new arrivals enter the inn, drawing the attention of customers. Young is horrified to realize that it is a squad of the heavenly demon sect. She soon sees the bald man among the people and says that that is the leader of the Red Wolf squad. His name is Sanzan. Robert is shocked because the Red Wolf platoon is also known as the Inspectors of the Demonic Sect. The bald man Zen specializes in tracking. The protagonist asks if those are really members of the demonic sect. Young asks with curiosity how he knows the sect if he has slept for 2,000 years. The protagonist just asks if people won't run away or panic. The captain replies that there is no reason for this. The heavenly demon sect really have peculiarities, but they are the most important orthodox sect in the entire universe. The protagonist did not expect to receive this information. Meanwhile, the bald gent checks all customers with his tracking device. He finds a man with his head down and then tells him to raise his head. The man obeys in fear. Jen analyzes the man's statistics and crimes, but realizes that he is not his target. Even so, Jen demands that he surrender to the Martial Alliance. Suddenly, the leader is immobile. The protagonist simply touched his bald head as if they were old friends and said that this was always his dream. The customers quickly turn to look at the scene. The protagonist says that he is admirable and hugs the bald man. The leader seriously asks if the boy has mental problems. Robert tries to help the protagonist by saying that he doesn't have many social skills. Jen just says that the brat is lucky because he would easily leave him in pieces if he felt any trace of martial art in him. At that moment, the leader tries to push the protagonist away, which obviously fails. He is in shock and tries to understand why his muscles are being prevented from moving the brat. Robert is also surprised and the captain says she doesn't know what's going on. Shen struggles and doesn't move from the place, so in a last alternative to get rid of the protagonist, he uses his internal power at maximum level. Some tables fly, and even the ceiling moves out of place. The protagonist returns to the group without a scratch. The captain can't help but notice that the guy used his maximum power to deal with a brat. Jen doesn't understand how the protagonist could have left intact. He didn't feel any trace of internal energy and concluded that it would be easy to finish him off. So the man uses the tracking device, but there is no record in the database. At this moment, the protagonist breaks the silence and says that the Red Wolf demon art is one of the lowest level martial arts of the Heavenly Demon Clan. He thought he would never see something like this again, but it seems that the sect has passed the low-level technique on until now. He decides to be generous and help in the leader's flawed training, but Bald is annoyed by the words he heard and tries to hit him with the first form of the Red Wolf demonic claw. The fireblade passes close to the brat's face and he dodges without much trouble. However, the whole restaurant is hit. Jen keeps trying to hit the target with his flaming claws, but it goes totally wrong, and he gets frustrated. Jen doesn't understand how a brat can dodge so well. Anyway, he thinks he can end everything in the next blow. Then he uses the maximum of his internal energy for the next attack. Suddenly, the protagonist grabs the man by the head and throws towards the ground, saying that this is unpleasant. That slight movement was able to leave the ground destroyed. The members of the Red Wolf platoon are horrified by the scene, because they did not imagine that the boss could be defeated by a brat. While the people in the place observe the event in silence, the protagonist tells the leader that martial arts are not just about imitating. He should train and adapt them to his own body. This is the reason for his defeat, but the protagonist encourages Bald to get up and try one more time. Nothing happens because Zen fainted during the impact on the ground. The members realize that the boss is unconscious and decide to deal with the brat. The 5 martial artists surround the protagonist. A few minutes later, the scene changes to District 32, where the ship of the Heavenly Demon Sect is located. All the members of the Red Wolf squad arrived unconscious. The nurses rushed to treat their injuries. The commander of District 32 named Jong Ratak watches the treatment of the soldiers on his broadcast panel and says that this is unbelievable. The doctor warns that despite the severe bruises, their lives are not in danger. Young sees the photo of the protagonist on the dashboard and asks how a boy could have left an entire platoon unconscious. Dr. Kunruk also does not know, mainly because the boy is not registered in the Martial Alliance database, but his comrades have been registered. They are a group of bounty hunters known as the S-Demon. They basically eliminate class criminals B or minors, led by a woman named Yang. Some call her a flaming demon. She is a well-known bounty hunter in the Orthodox and non-Orthodox world. The group left the inn after the incident, but they can be tracked down if the sect wants. Captain Jong thanks for the information and says he will take care of it personally. Chunruk agrees and says goodbye. Jong walks to the panel, and after pressing a button, starts a call with the leader of the group, Greenwood. Meanwhile, the ship of the group of bounty hunters travels in space. The protagonist is ready for another meal. It seems that he did not realize the trouble he caused his comrades. Robert admits that he is afraid of the brat. He was able to subdue a platoon of rank martial artists with a single blow. Young says that he didn't see anything too much. She could also deal with that group because they are the weakest in rank A. Robert confesses that if he used the power to the maximum, it could perhaps cause some scratches. The captain leaves him talking to himself and tells the protagonist that they need to talk. The boy replies that he will do it after eating, but Young insists on the conversation and asks his name. The protagonist does not answer, and Robert tries to improve the tense atmosphere. Sunja delivers the plate of sausages, but is scolded by the boss. Yeong says that the protagonist will only eat when he answers the questions. Robert tries to convince her to let the brat eat, but the woman stands firm. Then the protagonist finally says that his name is Lee Machin. She asks his identity and profession. A silence takes over the place. Machin then says that he is the supreme celestial demon. Young thinks it's a joke, but he doesn't have time to talk about it because suddenly the ship turns red and an alert is issued. Everyone hears that a target has been detected. Sunja takes control and says that they are being followed. Young already imagined that the Heavenly Demon sect were going to act, but Sunja says that the attack is from the Greenwood sect. At this moment, several ships with skull emblems surround the Demoness fortress, where the protagonist and his group are. The man responsible for the attack is the Galactic Division leader of the 72 Greenwood fortresses. His name is Kim Sungbom. The captain of the investigation platoon asks permission for the capture. Sung asks if the man is sure of all the information he said. The captain confirms by saying that the target operates mainly on the outskirts of the galaxy. Sung thinks about how the Heavenly Demon sect would get along with a small group like this. John contacted him and offered him a good reward. At first, Sung thought he should capture the ship, but the leader of the Heavenly Demon sect said that the demon's fortress should be exterminated. The leader of Greenwood still doesn't understand the reason for the request and says that he feels that something is wrong. The Heavenly Demon sect are the best at eliminating people, so there's no point in handing over that task to him. There's certainly something on that ship. At this moment inside the Demoness fortress, Yang assumes that the enemies are bandits and want to steal the ship. Robert says that it is impossible. There are many fortresses out there and it would not even be worth stealing their ship. The captain feels offended by these words, but says that she does not care. Just run over the fortresses that are in the way. Machin looks at the ships enchanted, while Sunja warns that it won't be easy to get over. Their opponent is the Galactic Division of Greenwood's 72 fortresses, and it seems that the entire division has been mobilized to prevent any escape. Young finally understands that the Sun Leader is responsible for the attack. No other person could mobilize so many fortresses at the same time. This is problematic because Yang knows he won't be able to stop him. Robert says that this is obvious. She will be eliminated in 3 moves if she faces Sung. The girl gets annoyed with her companion. Robert just takes a deep breath and says that it is better to surrender. Yang asks everyone to follow his instructions from now on. According to his combat experiences, the enemies will first fire bombs from capture to cut the ship's power and leave them incapacitated. Yang does not intend to prevent this. Then the enemies will enter the ship to make a search. She is willing to allow all this for their survival. Robert does not understand the difference between her plan and surrendering. Anyway, everyone follows the captain's orders. She tries to calm the protagonist down because she thinks he might be scared. Then says that these guys can't use heavy weapons because of the spatial laws. At least that's what Yang thought. At that moment, Sunja yells that they're screwed. The S-Demon ship is under the crosshairs of a photon cannon. Yang looks at the enemies horrified. Meanwhile, inside the rival fortress, the leader is asked if this is not a crime. The cannon violates the space rules and can cause problems for the division later. The captain of the investigation squad suggested capturing the hunters and eliminating silently, but Sung is against it, saying that just blow them up. The responsibility will be transferred to the Heavenly Demon sect if things get complicated, therefore the division must open fire immediately. At that moment, Yang and the team go into despair inside the S-Demon ship. Sunja warns that there is no way out. They are surrounded and the ship has no more shields. There is no more option for the captain. Sung allows the cannon to open fire. The protagonist and the group of hunters are illuminated by fire. Apparently, the S-Demon ship was hit very hard. In seconds, the smoke dissipated, and Sung looked curious. He was surprised to notice the intact ship. It turns out that a shield appeared 100 times larger than the S-Demon ship and protected them. A silver-haired woman slowly walked through the shield. Even Yang was surprised by the scene. Sung knew that woman and the fear in his eyes was visible. Elena was in front of him. All eyes were directed to one of the most powerful women in that universe. Sung knew that it would not be good to try to pierce that shield. In that case, he preferred to activate the teleportation. In his head, Sung asked what this monster came here to do. Robert commented to the group that he did not expect the appearance of the 8-foot fighting ghost. Elena is an S-class bounty hunter. She is so powerful that even the leaders of most sects avoid her. Young replies that he still does not understand why the woman protected them. At that moment, Sung appears in front of Elena and refers to her sister. But the huntress is silent. Sung tries to ask if she has forgotten him. The guy says he is her younger brother and the last time they saw each other was at Elena's mother's birthday 2 years ago. The huntress with an intimidating voice tells him to leave. Sung tries to impose himself and asks Elena not to see him as a brother. And yes, the leader of the Galactic Division of the 72 Greenwood fortresses. In that case, he refuses to accept the order to leave. A powerful beam of light envelops Elena's body. Robert says that the two are about to fight. Young replies that this woman is not easy even for Greenwood. If things get worse, her mother may appear. At that moment, Sung understands that Elena will use her fist to send him away, so he surrenders. But before he asks why his sister is interfering, he assumes that the S-Demon ship is also Elena's target. If so, he promises not to interfere. Elena does not answer the questions. and in a serious voice tells him to leave. It was expected that the huntress would not say any information, but it left a doubt in Sung's head because he didn't think that the huntress wanted the insignificant targets. After the conversation with the leader of the Galactic Division, Elena tells the group of hunters to surrender, or they will be decimated. Robert despairs and asks if there is something valuable in this ship that Young forgot to warn. At first, everyone thought that there was nothing in the fortress that could attract a bounty hunter like her, until attention fell on the protagonist. Poor Machin didn't understand anything when Young caught if he ever had an affair in the past with Elena. Maybe he ran away after the breakup. The protagonist replies that Elena is not here because of him. The boy turns back and tells the child to leave, but the hunters see nothing and ask what he was talking about. Machin reassures, saying that everything is fine and she can leave. An invisibility shield is deactivated, and a girl appears in front of them. Robert was so scared that no words come out of his mouth. On the other hand, Yang tried to understand how the girl got there. The protagonist said that the girl followed them from the inn. She had presence but no form, so Machin decided not to stop her from entering the ship. He also noticed that the girl used an advanced stealth technique to hide her breath and not be noticed. Sunja interrupts him to say that the newcomer is not using a stealth technique, she is wearing a stealth pendant. Yang soon scolds the girl for invading her fortress without permission. The newcomer introduces herself as Hua Ren, but the captain says she doesn't care. She is sure that the enemies are after Rin. The girl replies that it is likely they will not rest until they catch her. Suddenly, Robert screams, asks if she said her name was Hua Rin. The captain asks if he knows. The hunter soon shouts that Rin is the main vocalist of Pronosian, an idol group that sang that hit song called Dynamite. The captain does not know who she is. Even with this information, Robert really was a fan of the group and even had a picture of her on his phone. Suddenly, Elena gives the ultimatum to hand over Rin. Robert asks why she is being sought, but the girl is silent. The captain says that it doesn't matter the reason why Rin is an invader anyway, so they must hand her over. Robert tries to make Yang change his mind, but she reminds him that she is the captain here. At this moment, Rin is kicked off the ship. Robert says that they shouldn't do this to the lead singer of Pronosian. Yang replies that things could get worse if Rin stays there. They are already fighting Greenwood. Becoming Elena's target will be problematic. In this case, there is no way to protect Rin. Yang admits that she doesn't like this decision, but they need to protect themselves first. At that moment, she presses the red button and the fortress gate is unlocked. Rin was ready to surrender when suddenly something touches her shoulder. She turns her head slowly to find the protagonist next to her. Machin calmly says that Rin shouldn't worry. At that moment, the hunters notice him there and asks how the brat went unnoticed. The captain presses the button desperately to close the gate. Robert thinks Machin has the ability to defeat Elena, but the captain remembers that he never saw the space. She even yells at Sunja to close the gate, but it's too late. Yang sees Machin and Rin jumping from the fortress towards the giant shield of the huntress Elena. The girl thanks the protagonist to accompany her, but fears that the boy will not resist the martial artists. Suddenly, the protagonist starts to run out of breath and chokes. Rin looks without understanding anything, until she realizes that Machin has no shield. The protagonist tries to return to the Demoness fortress. Elena and Sung observe the scene from afar. Rin shouts that the outside temperature is -300 degrees. The pressure will wipe out the inside of his body in 10 seconds. She can't believe that he left there without a shield. At that moment, Machin already turned blue and his eyes took on a reddish hue. His consciousness slowly goes away. Yang finally manages to get to him, and with a touch of his hand, a nano-shield is activated, but the protagonist does not answer the woman's questions, which makes her expect the worst. Suddenly, Machin opens his eyes and his face turns red again. Yang yells at him for scaring her. She thought he had passed away. The protagonist said that the woman worried for no reason. After all, he is the supreme being of heaven and earth, and nothing in this world can stop him. After these words, the protagonist asks how he gets to the shield of the huntress Elena. The captain takes him to the shield while saying various offenses mentally. Inside the S-Demon ship, Robert is happy that everything went well. Sonja says that it is strange, because even the greatest master cannot resist space without a shield for more than a minute, but Machin resisted for 6 minutes without taking any damage. At that moment, Yang and the protagonist walk alongside Rin. The captain feels Elena's oppressive aura. Sung is still there. Yang takes charge of the situation and tells the brats that he will solve it. Then a smile appears on her face, and she introduces herself gently to Elena and Sung. But the two brothers don't seem satisfied to meet her. Rin holds the protagonist's hand in fear. He notices that she is shaking and reassures her that everything will be fine. The idol has doubts about it because the opponent is not a human. She says that Elena is like a fighting spirit. She travels the world in search of opponents since she was young, and no one has ever survived a duel with her. The protagonist admires the martial artist's fighting spirit. Rin doesn't think this is positive. At that moment, the captain asks them to have a peaceful conversation, but Elena says she can talk to her sword. The next second, the blade cuts through the air. Young almost flies into space. She lands on the ground and asks why Elena is acting like this. Kim admires how the captain dodged the attack, but he thinks that this will only make Elena angrier. Silence circulates around the place until Rin starts coughing and the protagonist pats her on the back. The division leader is incredulous at the scene because he saw that the boy was in the path of the attack, but it seems to have been unaffected. Elena then prepares a new attack. A powerful beam of light erupts from her body. She looks at the targets hoping they would be scared. However, the protagonist seems concerned only with Rin's physical condition. He decides to solve it himself and ignores Young's pleas. Machin directly tells Elena to discuss matters with him, as now Rin is under his protection. Sung tries to find out information about the protagonist but realizes that there is nothing about him in the database. Machin notices Elena's silence and says that in this case there is nothing to talk about. He was about to leave when an explosion lit everyone up. Elena tried to assassinate Machin with a swing of the sword, but failed because he stopped the blow with his hand. The protagonist, with coldness in his words, told her to give up. Despite having a lot of internal energy at such a young age, Elena still couldn't handle him. The huntress doesn't give up and takes another attack stance. The protagonist identified that Elena is exchanging internal energy for the Red Sun Divine Art of Wudings. This technique is impressive. Even Sung couldn't believe that the woman was about to use 95% internal energy. Mokin just asks if that's all the power she has. Without much conversation, Elena pulls out an iron staff from secondary space, but the next moment her body becomes immobile and a sound sounds from the ring on her finger. In the same second, a flashback invades her mind. In the past, Elena received advice from her mother. The woman said that her daughter was amazing and would not stop her from traveling space to fight her rivals. She is one of the best martial artists and will be difficult to defeat, but she asked Elena to take a ring with her. She said that her daughter must run away if the ring ever sounds. If that happens, it means that the opponent is beyond her reach. The mother added that she could be murdered if she ignored the warning. That was the first time in Elena's entire life that she heard the sound of the ring. She didn't want to run away with her tail between her legs like a dog. She remembers that she always wanted to stand out from her siblings in childhood and thought she found the perfect opportunity to do so, so Elena ignores her mother's advice. At that moment, her body is consumed by a light in front of all opponents, and her internal energy reaches 120%. Elena's body was covered with quality armor. The protagonist admired the transformation because it is an ability he has never heard of, but presumes that it is a transcendental awakening. Suddenly, Elena advances using the sword of the Chaotic Storm Sword technique of the Yamei sect. Despite the attempts, the protagonist skillfully dodges and realizes that the girl is striving. She used techniques from 3 different sects, but it didn't result in anything. Elena then gives up the sword and uses fire spheres. The protagonist finally decides to act. He cuts the woman's attack. Then she pushes the shield with her feet and floats in the air. Everyone looks on in surprise. Elena is using the 8 swords technique. Her energy reached 190%, and she dived towards Machin. The protagonist just waited for the confrontation in silence, while on the other hand, Elena was sure she would defeat him. Machin wouldn't let that happen because he promised Rin that he would protect her. As expected, he finally channeled the power into his hands and called the Heart Sword, surprising Young and Sung. The protagonist shouted that Elena should have stopped. The next moment, he cut the air towards the girl. The blow was so powerful that it left the shield in pieces. The debris fell into space after an explosion that almost hit the ships. Sung returned to the fortress in time, and with some injuries. He observes the destruction through the glass door and says that he would not be alive if the teleportation had been delayed by at least 1 second. At that moment, in one of the wreckage of the shield, Captain Young scolds the protagonist, saying that they could have been eliminated by this attack. Red liquid escapes from Machin's mouth and he calmly replies that holding back is not an option. Young is surprised that he was injured. The protagonist says that it was because Elena's power was greater than he imagined. Attention is directed to the hunter, who at this moment is unconscious. Young is worried about the woman's condition. The protagonist says that Elena is alive, not because he wanted to, but because a greater force protected her. At that moment, we can see that someone in a golden hood appeared at the right time to save her. Everyone could recognize that apparition, and were surprised. It was Elena's mother. She took the huntress back home and Elena was placed in a test tube with green liquid. Not only that, the woman also took everyone who was involved in the duel. Sung knelt before her mother and apologized, but she ignored him and told him to act like he wasn't there, then walked over to the S-Demon Limbs and directly introduced herself to the protagonist as the Western Sky Matriarch. Her name is Kim. Sung was impressed by the fact that her mother showed respect for someone. Not even Yang believed what her eyes were seeing. Kim admits that he violated the martial arts dueling code by rudely intervening to save his daughter, so she is willing to cut off her own arm as an apology. For the protagonist, the action is exaggerated. Young tells him to choose his words carefully because the Western Sky Sword Matriarch is in front of him. Machin recognizes this and asks if Elena is her daughter. The woman answers in the affirmative. Young advises the protagonist to behave politely, because this woman is one of the 5 immortals. Her temper is so bad that he can be split in 2 with just one look. Unlike what Young thought, the matriarch knelt to the protagonist while asking for a private conversation. The 2 went to the terrace of the flying ship. The woman said she didn't understand why Elena hasn't woken up yet, but it was confirmed that the place she passed through before meeting him was Mount Hua. Something probably happened there. Anyway, Kim wanted to talk about the technique he used during the fight. She knew the Demon Heart Sword technique and so asks if he has any relationship with the Heavenly Demon Sect. Machin replies that in the past he had a deep connection with the sect, but time has passed, the ties were broken a few years ago. The conversation is followed from afar by some curious people. The matriarch understood during the conversation that everything in the body of the person in front of her was perfectly refined, the energy internal and even martial arts. No trace of artificiality, which was a surprise because she thought that this state could only be achieved during the peak period of martial arts. But the boy in front of her seems to be 20 years old. She assumes that Machin used some rejuvenation skill. Suddenly, the protagonist surprised her with a question. He questioned if she wanted to fight. It turns out that despite the woman's polite words, the protagonist continued to feel the murderous intention she emanated. The matriarch praises his heightened senses. Machin reminds her that whoever survives will be seriously injured. The woman agrees and soon takes a fighting position. Yang notices Kim's beam of light and fears that the worst could happen. The protagonist calmly says that he doesn't plan to fight now. He wants to know even more about this world. So in the future they can schedule the duel. The woman is surprised by the words. After that, the protagonist returned to the S-Demon ship and left. The matriarch then met with Sung and asked if his goal was to silence that boy. The leader of the division confirms. The woman doesn't understand why the Heavenly Demon Sect would want Machin to pass away. It's clear that he possesses the supreme martial arts of the Heavenly Demon Sect. This means that the boy is one of them. Sung says that the last information he received was that the Red Wolf platoon was annihilated by an unknown entity. He assumes that the entity in question is Machin. The woman says that no matter what he thinks, from today Sung must carefully follow the movements of the S-Demon ship and report the location to her. The leader of the division obeys. The woman adds that he should not interfere because he does not want to see his son injured. Sung is surprised because this was the only affectionate gesture he heard from his mother in all these years. Unfortunately, the matriarch didn't even know his name. Deep down, only one daughter really mattered to her. At that moment inside the demon's fortress, Yang yells at the idol and says that she caused a lot of trouble today. Rin was able to arouse the fury of Elena and Greenwood. To top it all off, she still found the matriarch of the Sword of the Western Sky. The idol says that she doesn't know what motivated these people to look for her. She remembers that she returned to her hometown after finishing the shows. Everything was different when she returned to Mount Hua. The people of the city started trying to capture her for no reason. While Rin tells the story of her life, the protagonist devours all the food that Sunja prepared. Captain Yang confesses that she also sees no reason for her to be persecuted. Suddenly, Robert realizes that his hometown has been mentioned and an idea comes up. He asks her to tell her more information about Mount Hua, Rin's eyes bulging with fright. Meanwhile, on the matriarch's floating ship, Elena finally regains consciousness and breaks the glass. Her mother soon asks what happened on Mount Hua that made her return so strange. At this moment at the Wild Heron Inn, Guardian Wang was watching the scenes of the fight between Elena and Machin. The video seemed to have gone viral. Wang now understands the valuable item that Yang spoke about earlier. The images clearly show how valuable the item is. The viral video reached Zhang. The leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect was horrified. His plan went awry and the target simply has the martial arts of his sect. He couldn't explain this familiarity to the Western Sky Sword Matriarch. Zhang defended himself by saying that the boy's skill is a level of martial prowess never seen or heard before, but he doesn't believe that this has anything to do with his sect. Elena's mother used her skill to make sure the man was telling the truth. Zhang hadn't lied, but the matriarch still had doubts about his sincerity. She asked why he sent Greenwood to finish off the brat if she didn't know him. Zhang only said that it was an internal matter of her sect. Kim was not satisfied with this answer, and the sect leader had his neck injured with a sway of the sword. The woman's agility was insane, and he only noticed the cut seconds later when the red liquid stained the floor. For Zhang, it was clear that she wanted to start a battle with the sect of heavenly demons. The woman calmly replied that she wouldn't mind. At first, the leader tried to avoid a fight, because he knew the opponent very well. The matriarch was the type of enemy driven by obsession in martial arts. At that moment, the woman gave him the chance to choose to fight with all the martial artists of his sect or surrender. The leader did not back down as expected. He decided to fight knowing that all the martial artists in District 32 would never be able to overcome the Western Sky Sword Matriarch. Zhang was ready to pass away defending his sect, which was admirable. The The first technique that appeared in the leader's hands was the sword Heart of the Asura demon. The matriarch laughed at it, and he didn't understand. Then she explained that it was the same technique that Machin used on her daughter. Zhang thinks she was wrong because these teachings were lost thousands of years ago, and no one in her sect has ever practiced the technique, except for the leader. Now that the matriarch saw the same technique as the brat, she asked again why Zhang was after him. In a nutshell, the leader admitted that he didn't want Machin. He was hunting the idol Rin. A few hours later, the demoness ship traveled towards the planet Mount Hua. They saw Huaham County without any inhabitants, which was impressive because it was overpopulated. The streets were deserted, and the captain even thought it was a holiday. But Robert noticed that the shops were open. Sunja gives the sad news that there is no sign of life in the city. A few days ago, there were at least 10,000 people in this place. Robert thinks the worst has happened and asks Young to go down the ship. He was worried because that was his hometown. At that moment, tears rolled down Rin's face. The protagonist encourages her to tell what she knows. The idol was about to speak when a sign of life was detected. The signal came from inside the main headquarters of Mount Hua, in the Jaha Pavilion. It is where the leader of the Mount Hua sect lives. The sign of life comes from a single person. Rin is completely silent with the new information. The group of hunters leave the demon-s ship and walk through the Jaha Pavilion. The place is gloomy and a thick fog hinders the view. Robert wore a powerful armor, justifying that he was afraid of what could be behind the disappearance of the inhabitants. Captain Young thought that he had already retired this combat suit. The outfit looks old. Anyway, Young intends to find out what went wrong in the place. She uses the communication device, and Sunja reveals that the sign of life is getting stronger. It means that they are on the right track. But Sunja asks them to be careful, because she couldn't identify if it was human. Robert simply ignored Sunja's request and invaded the temple, saying that he was going to finish off the animal that destroyed his city. Young followed after him, but asked Machin and Rin to be on alert. Initially, the path from the tunnel to the temple was dark, but after a few passes a loud sound was heard, accompanied by an explosion. The tunnel was lit with fire. Rin and Young were not injured thanks to the protagonist, but almost kissed because the boy did not calculate the distance of the two very well. The captain looked scared, wondering if Robert was okay. Machin suddenly let go of her and said they should look. Young finds Robert motionless with his hands in the air and asks him to say something if he is alive. The hunter did not answer, causing concern. Sunja said that he was alive thanks to the retired armor. She thinks that Robert has not given a word so far because of the scare of the explosion. Captain Young is relieved, but the next moment the tension rises. A flower-shaped beam of pink light travels towards Machin's head. The place transforms as soon as the flower touches his hair. The beam was magic, and the hunters were sent to the hideout of the sect leader Mount Hua. The man was seated on the throne, enveloped in energy. Young quickly confirmed with Sunja that this was the sign of life she saw. Sunja gave an extra piece of information. This man is the sovereign of the blooming flowering sword, and his name is ᴄᴏᴘᴘᴘ. Young was shocked to see the sovereign of the sword of Mount Hua in front of him. The protagonist was able to notice that Juxin had reached the pinnacle of the Celestia Fragrance Heart technique when he saw that the plum blossoms opened with the heat. The purple coloring of the flowers showed that the technique of the celestial fragrance of the flower was mixed with the divine art of the purple mist. At that moment, Rin couldn't hold back her tears and called for her father. She had a bad feeling. It was clear to everyone in the place that something was wrong, and the captain asked what the protagonist thought it was. To Machin, it was clear that the sovereign was having trouble choosing between the heavenly flower fragrance heart technique or the purple mist divine art. Even the elders of Mount Hua can choose only one technique to master. This means that the two arts cannot mix, and that man in front of them is no longer a human. The protagonist quickly conjures his powers and asks Young to get everyone out of here because it will be an uphill battle. In a moment of desperation, the idol runs to her father, ignoring the captain's pleas for her to stop. The protagonist says that it is too late. Sunja watches the moment Rin touches Juxin. She hugs him, and slowly the energy of the techniques runs out. Suddenly everything goes back to normal, and the man opens his eyes. Sunja looks scared when she realizes that the inhabitants of the county have appeared again. The streets were full of people again. The captain asked what had happened, but Sunja couldn't explain. The scene changes to a while later. All the hunters of the demon-s ship gathered at a restaurant in Huaham County. Young asks if Sunja is sure there was no one before. Maybe the bio-scanner was defective. Sunja assured that the scanner was normal. She also can't explain the fact that she only detects a single sign of life. But even though people have returned, something still seems wrong. Thanks to Sensor's ability, Sunja realized that the internal energy of the people in that place has been completely drained, both children and adults. Robert thinks that everything seems fine since they are alive. The captain says that he worries and stops worrying at the same speed. The hunter quickly finds the waitress to order, but she simply walks past him as if she didn't see him. Robert thought he had been ignored. The woman attended to a couple who were sitting near them and then passed Robert again, ignoring him completely. Sonja said the waitress wasn't doing it on purpose. It seems that she can't see them. Plus, no one in the restaurant has noticed their presence. Yang feels that there is something bad behind it. Meanwhile, in the Jaha Pavilion, the protagonist complains to Rin that the leader is ignoring them. The idol says that her father is not rude. It turns out that he just can't see them. The girl says that she has found him like this since he returned from tour. The strange thing is that he does all the work and tasks normally, like drinking tea and doing inspections, always at the same times every day as if he were under the effect of magic. The protagonist makes several movements to confirm that Juksan does not see him. Rin asks him to be careful, because it can be dangerous to prevent the leader from following his repetitive routine. As expected, Machin took the cup that the leader was holding before the girl finished speaking. Suddenly, Juksan pulls the sword out of its scabbard and tries to hit the protagonist's neck. He dodges at the last second. The leader's attack continues and his blows are agile. Machin realizes that he needs to counterattack before he is injured. He blocks Juksan's technique with the sword art heart of the demon Asura. The confrontation results in a powerful beam of light and Rin is pushed away. The protagonist notices with concern that the leader is displaying extreme yang and extreme yin together, which makes everything more dangerous. Rin yells at Machin to return the cup, but he tries to understand what is driving Juksan to the extreme. It seems that the leader is no longer human. The protagonist can't understand the story behind it. Suddenly, Juksan sends the plum blossom, a fatal blow even for masters. Machin thinks fast and throws the cup into the center of the flower. The attack is destroyed, and the leader holds the cup. Then everything goes back to normal. Rin says she really doesn't know what happened. A little less than a month ago, her tour came to an end, and she returned home, but it was already like this. People seem to follow their routines normally and can't see her. The group of bounty hunters walked among passersby until Robert touched one of the people and interrupted his repetition. So at that moment, everyone stopped. The passersby stood as still as if their shares had been frozen. The next moment, everyone disappeared. Robert asks Sonja if this was a teleportation, and the girl says she doesn't know. The captain is surprised because Sonja always has answers to everything. If she doesn't know, it means the situation is worse than they thought. Sonja says that at first it looks like a teleportation, but she is not sure because the scale is too large. At this moment, the girl warns that the sign of life on the entire planet has disappeared. The idol was scared when she saw this happening for the first time. Now she got used to it and asked them to look ahead. Something happens when the inhabitants disappear. The hunters soon see an army of tin men. The robots walk slowly towards them. The three hunters are surrounded, and Robert fears that staying in the center could be dangerous. The captain says that they are finished. Sonja explains that these robots are models created for simple jobs such as planetary development. It does not seem dangerous. They are weak models equipped with low-capacity artificial intelligence. Robert regrets having freaked out for nothing. The captain reassures him by saying that these cans don't hurt humans. The hunter doesn't feel so confident because they are holding swords. Young says he will solve it and soon tells the robots to go back to where they came from, but suddenly she is attacked by one of them. The woman dodges the blade and thinks it is a malfunction. The next moment, several robots surround her and try to hit her. The hunters fight fiercely with the cans. Meanwhile, in the pavilion, the idol realizes that things are getting out of control. She remembers that she was also attacked when she returned from tour, but he survived thanks to his father, because for some reason robots can't enter the room where Juksan is training. When people disappear, Juksan returns to the throne. The protagonist says that the man is resisting. He is probably burning all his internal energy along with his soul to face his inner demons if necessary. Perhaps because there is something he has to protect at any cost. Rin understands that the protagonist is talking about her. Machin promises that he will take care of it and find the scum responsible for it. At this moment, the hunters are trying to run away from the robots. They are chased and cornered. Sonja hides behind the captain and says she doesn't know why the robots are doing this. The intelligence system of the cans should not violate the 3 laws of robotics. Attacking humans is not even an option for them, which makes everything more confusing and without explanation. Robert finally has an explanation for this. Yang quickly realizes that there is no way out but to face these cans, so she asks Sonja to protect herself. Suddenly, an explosion throws the robots away. The captain looks in shock at Robert, and without understanding the combat suit, the hunter warns that these things are not robots. They are iron guards, also known as reanimated corpses or zombies. At that moment, the image of the hunters is transmitted to the person in charge of the iron guards. They quickly identify Yang and his group. Someone says that the S-Demon is a group of bounty hunters that operates mainly in the outskirts of the galaxy. They are not a threat, so they can be eliminated in 10 seconds if the commander gives the order. The silver-haired commander hears this silently, so the robot next to him calls him by the name of Count Richel and asks if he can give the order to eliminate these people. A few minutes later, the protagonist meets his friends outside the pavilion and is surprised by the scene. He asks how the group finished off the enemy so fast. Robert brags, saying that this time he fought for real, thanks to his armor. Young is silent listening to this because she remembers that she almost sold Robert's costume when they ran out of money. Anyway, Sunja warns that they didn't really win. They only won because the robots left. The situation would have been different if the enemies wanted to fight for real. The protagonist finds some parts of the robots on the ground and asks if this is the enemy's armor. Young tries to explain what a robot is, but Machin doesn't understand and asks her to detail it further. The captain passes the job to Sunja, and she makes a summary, saying that robots are like a machine that can think and act like a person. Despite the explanation, the protagonist does not understand how a piece of metal could imitate a human. Suddenly, Sunja detaches her head from her own body and asks if he now understands. She is not a human. Sunja is a robot like the enemies, but the protagonist did not know this and was afraid when he saw her separate the head from the body. Young asks if the girl forgot to tell, and she justified it by saying that she was busy. Machin used the idol as a protection shield against Sunja. Suddenly, the body camera of one of the defeated robots films the protagonist and warns the Count that he does not. There is information about the brat in the database. It also seems that he has no internal energy in his body. In this case, Rishal says that the boy is not someone to worry about. His concern is Robert. The hunter was from the Special Tactical Division of the Galaxy Combat Unit and is known as an elite soldier. The data informs that Robert is the first sergeant, so Rishal is sure that he is one of the best. Meanwhile, in District 32, Jong returns to the base and welcomes the officer. The door of the small ship opens, and a man descends. He is the officer of the Disaster Safety Headquarters. His name is Cho Dian. The officer is quickly taken to the room where the wounded Red Wolf platoon are. He checks Sanjin's condition and touches the mark that the protagonist left on the bald man's head. Sanjin warns that now the pain has subsided, but he is still in persistent heat. Dian is intrigued. Suddenly he slaps the mark and Sanjin screams in pain. Now the leader of the Red Wolf platoon has gained a new mark on the bald head. Jong realizes that there is a difference between the two. The original scar has swollen, but the officer's mark is quite receding. In a short time, Dian came to a conclusion. He said that the technique used by the owner of the first scar is from the Nine-Yin Palm. Jong is incredulous, realizing that it is a martial art of his sect. It is of the lowest level taught to any introductory disciple of the heavenly demons. The officer is taken to a dark and private room so that they can talk better. The Dr. Kunruk serves a special dish. Dian gives more information about the enemy's technique. He realized that cold energy was used in the Nine-Yin Palm essence. This means that the aggressor has reached a level where he can suppress the fundamental coldness of the palm and leave only the heat of the impact. The attack can be seen as an act of consideration to avoid harming the enemy. The leader of the heavenly demon sect tries to get new information, but the officer says that he wants to eat first. Jong agrees with no other alternative. The next day, back to the Demoness. Robert explains what an Iron Guard is. He heard that name when he was a child. It is a group that develops a type of combat android that includes humans. Young says that this is ridiculous because robots are designed based on the 3 laws of robotics. Meanwhile, the protagonist touches Sunja's face, confirming that she is not, it's a human. Robert then tells the captain that the Iron Guards group replace intelligence circuits with the brains of human corpses. That way they can attack humans. Sunja can't stand Machin's hand touching his face anymore and threatens to dismantle all his limbs. He soon shrinks his hands. The captain has a hard time accepting Robert's idea. Using human corpses is a very insane idea, and she thinks that such a group does not exist. Suddenly, the protagonist catches her attention. The girl soon understands that he wants more food and asks Sunja to take care of it. But the girl says that the food has run out. In this case, Young says that they need to resolve the situation as soon as possible to return to life as it was before. Suddenly, Machin's mood changes and he asks how they dare to deny him food. A light erupts from his body. The hunters don't understand what is happening. The protagonist says that they simply ignore the fact that he is the supreme celestial demon. Young remembers that he said it right at their first meeting, but again ignores it, saying that they need to resolve the Mount Hua situation. Robert follows her while telling the protagonist that they can talk about his identity later. Sunja leaves the ship soon after. The protagonist is left alone and his drama passes. Meanwhile, the hunters retrieve some medals. Robert says that the cans look weak. Sunja replies that it is because it is a prototype. She knows it thanks to the recognition system. The neural networks of the robots are also simple. Sunja adds that the intelligence circuit is equipped with the primitive M207 chip. It is so poor that it is embarrassing to call it artificial intelligence. Sunja holds the M207 chip and says that this thing is optimized to receive commands, so it has no autonomous will. They were controlled remotely by each person. Sunja adds that yesterday they were attacked by 9,817 robots. This means that at least 9,817 humans were controlling those cans. At that moment elsewhere, Rochelle looks at the iron guards being built. The base is human corpses. Meanwhile, at Mount Hua, the captain tries to find out what the total population of the district was. Sunja replies that 9,818. Only one person is left to be transformed into a robot, the leader of the Jaha Pavilion. At this moment in District 32, the officer leaves Zhang open-mouthed by ordering a state of immobility and lockdown for the entire District 32. No one should leave or be allowed to enter. He demands that Zhang immediately bring back to base all personnel sent to other planets. Dian justifies his order by saying that currently the situation is precarious. The 2,000 years of peace are over. The officer adds that the Heavenly Demon Sect is the largest currently. This means that they will be the first to become the target. Zhang widens his eyes, realizing what the man means. The officer makes it clear that it won't be long before the rival sects join together to take down the strongest. Therefore, they need to act with extreme caution, especially in the current martial world. The officer's orders are quickly executed. Yang asks if Dian thinks that the unidentified individual who uses the martial arts of the Heavenly Demon Sect may be involved in this. Dian replies that he doesn't know. That's the biggest problem. They haven't identified the greater enemy yet. The officer adds that he found out a short time ago that that unknown individual was heading towards Mount Hua. Zhang is horrified by the situation. Dian gives the last orders before leaving. He tells the leader to think before acting. After that, the officer's ship leaves the base. Later in the Jaha Pavilion, the bounty hunters discovered new information. Now they know that the missing always appear at night, except for the father of the Rin. The captain asks how much is left until sunset. Sunja replies that day and night change every 6 hours on Mount Hua, so there is 1 second left for sunset. Suddenly, the leader's energy runs out and he returns to normal. Rin receives her father's hug. She is happy even knowing that these actions are done without consciousness. For some reason, Jeksan repeats this every day when the sun rises. The other villagers also repeat a specific day. Robert is watching the city and warns the captain that so far no robot has appeared. Yang asks Sunja if they are late today. The girl says that there is something wrong. Instead of the robots appearing, Yang is disappearing. The captain hears this and at the same moment looks at her hands. Her body is becoming translucent and her vital signs are dropping. Before Yang can take any action, she just disappears. At that moment, the leader of Greenwood receives the news that a teleportation has been detected in the center of the planet Mount Hua. The analysis confirmed that the individual is the flaming demon Yang. Sung asks the girl's current location. The investigation leader says that she was taken to the second moon of the planet Mount Hua. The place is called Genta. At that moment, the captain is trapped somewhere on the moon. She starts screaming, asking where her body is, and even checks if she is still alive. But she doesn't come to any conclusion. Suddenly, her body becomes visible again, and she is teleported to a room where Duke Ritual watches her. The awkward silence takes over the place, and the captain doesn't know who the man is. It was easy for the Greenwood sect to realize that there was no consent from Yang during the teleportation process. The investigation leader noticed an unauthorized and forced transfer. He notified Sung that a unilateral teleportation is forbidden by galactic law, then suggests reporting this to the superiors. Sung asks if there is anyone superior. The investigation leader soon kneels down and asks for forgiveness for what he said. For him, Sung is the true superior being. In this case, the leader of Greenwood orders the man not to intervene in anything. They will do a thorough investigation before taking any action. The man complies with the order. At that moment at the Matriarch's base, Elena finally tells what she saw on Mount Hua. She says that she found a man who identified himself as her father. The mother asks what happened during the fight. Elena says that she lost to the man. The woman is surprised by the answer, but now she knows where the one who defeated her daughter and claimed to be her father is. Meanwhile, in the demon's ship, Robert tries to convince the protagonist to find Yang. He fears that the worst will happen. Mukjin does not understand some things that the hunter says and asks Sunja to translate, but she says that she will not do it because they are ugly words. The idol believes that Yang was taken to the same place as the other inhabitants. This is worse because they don't have any information. Sunja replies that the captain suffered teleportation without consent like everyone else. Robert says that in this case, everyone is stuck in the same place. The man shakes the protagonist from side to side, while yelling that they need to hurry. Mokjin asks why the man is so out of control. Sunja says that Robert has gained some upsets due to his time in the army. He even struggles to control his anger, but always fails. The protagonist manages to calm the man down by saying that they will find the captain. Sanja gives the next information. She is sure that Young is still inside the planet because a long-distance teleportation is impossible, but there is a possibility that individuals were sent to some of the 2 moons next to the planet Mount Hua. This is the best option for Sanja because the planet has only one vital sign, which is from Rin's father. The first moon is Cicerus, and the second is called Genta. there are signs of life on both. The protagonist understands that Sunja will not be able to find the right moon, so they will have to guess. The girl says that the golden moon is better. It is the captain's favorite color. At this moment on the Jenna moon, Yang is analyzed by the robot next to Rishel. It is said that the captain only carries a sword attached to her waist. Rishel says that the girl's internal energy is nothing. Yang continues to ask who he is. At this moment in another place, an old man enjoys the birth of a plant. The officer Dian approaches him and calls him master. The old man soon asks if Dian was responsible for solving what is happening in Mount Hua. The old man advises the officer not to act impulsively and says that it is better to wait until the bud blooms completely. In addition, they need to wait until the entities that support Ritual are completely exposed. Then they will be able to attack decisively. The old man remembers that Dian was created to understand this, but it doesn't seem to be mature enough. The elder gets worried and asks if something happened. The officer then reveals that an unknown individual has performed his sex martial arts and reached the level of energy flow reversal. This person also knows the sex secret technique, the Sura Demon Heart technique. The problem is that the individual does not belong to the sect. Suddenly, the elder shouts that they must murder this individual. The small sprout behind the old man simply grows old while the man shouts that they must put an end to this monster. The sudden change of mood catches the attention of the officer. He is then forced to act. At that moment on the Genten moon, after the captain asks who the Duke is, he gives permission to the robot next to him to check what Young brought. Suddenly, the captain is taken by surprise and tries to stop the Tin Woman, but fails and is immobilized. Ritual says that the resistance is useless. He promises to release her if Young answers the question seriously, but she refuses to surrender and soon takes the sword stuck in her waist. The quick attack almost hits the robot. A fight ensues and the Duke says that fighting the can is useless. It contains the information of all martial arts. The captain realizes that her own movements are being copied. Even so, she resists and is hit with a push in the back. Yang quickly gets up and faces the opponent. In seconds, the robot appears behind her and tries to immobilize. But the captain expected this and jumped into the air. Then she threw the tip of the blade in the center of the robot's face. The sword is blocked, and Yang feels the opponent's hand touch her belly. But in the next moment, the sword tries to return to the owner and hits the robot's head in the process. The can falls to the ground defeated, and Rishel is horrified by the scene. He recognizes the Black Sky Dragon dagger. It is a technique of the Tang clan of Sichuan. Yang lands on the ground and this time Rishel asks who she is. The girl was injured during the fight and realizes that things can get worse now that the man knows the technique. Rishel asks how she knows the martial arts if the Tang clan of Sichuan was wiped out 10 years ago without a trace. Yang decides to use one more skill since he is with no way out. A green light surrounds his body and Xuan Wu's art is activated. It is a secret technique exclusive to the Tang clan. At that moment, Yang jumps into the air to attack from all directions. Then the infinite rainflower technique is used. Ritual looks in awe before the attack reaches his body. At the same time on the Matriarch's floating ship, Elena says that the circumstances of the encounter with the man who claims to be her father were strange. She arrived at Mount Hua for a mission when he was suddenly teleported to a dark room. Her father was sitting there on a couch. The Matriarch quickly notices that it is a one-sided teleportation. Elena says that the man wanted to fulfill a wish of hers. Rishel knew that the Huntress wanted to get stronger and wanted the world under her feet. She wasn't satisfied even with the infamous title of 8-foot fighter. Elena loved what she did so much that she turned the ship itself into a dueling arena. Despite this, the girl is dissatisfied with life. So her father promised to give her the power she wanted so much, but Elena found Rishel annoying and didn't trust his words, so the man suggested a fight, and just as he defeated Captain Yang, Elena was also defeated. But Rishel left her alive because she was his daughter. On the other hand, Rishel advised Yang to be sincere when answering questions. He also promised that he would make her strong. At this moment, Elena shows the power she gained from her father. It is a steel fortification. At the same time, Sunja finds Yang's location. Robert is anxious and asks her hurry, but the S-Demon ship finds a fortress on the way. The hunter tells the girl to need, but Sunja says that it is a Celestial-class combat ship. The S-Demon ship does not even compare to the fortress. In addition, the ship belongs to the sect of Sela Demons. Before Sunja is speaking, the officer is teleported into their ship. Dian stares at the protagonist attentively. Mokjin was annoyed by the small amount of food. Robert tries to talk to the officer, but he sits at the table with the protagonist and asks the boy to feel free to talk. Robert wonders what a first-ranking officer wants to talk to Mokjin. Dian is direct and says he came here to ask the brat directly to stay out of this subject. He adds that the mastermind behind the Mount Hua incident is someone named Rishel Arkamon. He was once a renowned scientist and conducted the development of military weapons for a defense company. The project was called City of Steel. But Rishel was expelled due to the inhumane development process. He has disappeared since then. The incident was caused by Rishel, and has already reached a large scale. Dain confesses that he thinks Rachel was not expelled. He suspects that the scientist is being secretly supported by some factions within the human government army. Machin interrupts the officer to ask for water. Dain expected a reaction from the brat, but it was in vain. Robert asks if the officer really thinks this is the work of humans. Dain confirms and hates again that they don't get involved, but Robert has no way to obey because his captain has been kidnapped. The officer says that all he can do is pray for her, which makes Robert completely lose control again and say that these words are absurd. Without wasting time, the protagonist questions what the officer is gaining by revealing valuable information to them. Machin is sure that the man's idea is to use him as a tool and not take any responsibility for his actions. He even accuses the bald officer of manipulation. Dain is silent in the face of those statements. So the protagonist decides to end the conversation at that moment, but the officer finally opens his mouth when he leaves the table and asks if the boy has any connection to the heavenly demon sect. Machin coldly replies that he has no connection with the sect. Dain decides to believe it for now, and says that in this case all his actions from now on have nothing to do with the sect. The protagonist waves his hand and tells him to leave. The officer quickly obeys, leaves the S-demon ship. He feels relieved to see that the sect of heavenly demons have great talents. Unfortunately, the brat he found does not have the maturity he expected. The group of bounty hunters decide to go after Young now that the officer has left. Sonja warns that the coordinates have changed. Before she thought the location was on the Cicerus moon, but now she is sure that it is the Genta moon. At that moment, Young had already been immobilized, so Rachel took her to the experiment room. She asked several times why he was doing it. Rachel didn't expect her to wake up so early and says that maybe it's because of the special lineage she has. The man then calmly says that he will erase her memories, even the darkest parts of her past. Later, she will be turned into an iron guard like all the other inhabitants of Mount Hua. Young tries to run away, but realizes that her hands are paralyzed. This happened because Rachel blocked all the meridians of her body and paralyzed her nervous system while she slept. The huntress continues to resist because she refuses to have such a horrible fate. The man keeps saying that he is useless, and yet she does not give up. Suddenly, Young manages to get up and is injured internally after breaking Rachel's blockade. She makes it clear that he can murder many members of the Tang clan, but he cannot have dominion over them. Young then uses the last card up his sleeve that he had saved. She quickly touches the man's heart with poison. In the Tang clan, it is common for children to receive a grain of deadly poison in their heart as a gift. This gift should be used when the individual knows that he will be eliminated. Rachel quickly tries to run away from the poison, but the girl soon says that it is useless because the poison becomes stronger when the user tries to get rid of it. Young added that they will pass away together. Soon the poison began to erode the metal in Rachel's body. The robot that was hit earlier tries to rid the master of that poison and cuts off the captain's arm. Young just watches as his entire body pours red liquid. Suddenly, an intruder alert sounds in the room. Robert and Machin watch the path being blocked by hundreds of robots, which meant they were in the right place. Robert says he can take care of these things and asks the protagonist to find the captain. Suddenly, Machin pushes the ground with his feet and everything starts to shake. Then Robert follows behind him. At the same moment, they see the crater where the robots are coming out. The protagonist then blows up as many enemies as he can. Robert thanks his friend for his help, but it seems that now there are more robots attacking him. Anyway, the hunter uses the missiles in his combat suit to buy time. The scene is seen by Count Rachel. He realizes that the hunter really saw prepared. Robert used his sniper cannon, automatic missiles, and even anti-gravity rocket. They are definitely special equipment for the special forces. But Rachel realizes from the movements that Robert is a retired soldier, so he says that he worried for nothing. The Count gives the order for the robot to take care of all the intruders. But soon another alert appears saying that the intruder is in District 8. Machin was so agile that he quickly entered District 7 in seconds, which made the Count clearly worried. But the new news is even more problematic. The system can no longer keep up with the speed, and the last location it knew from the intruder was that he was in District 2 before the robot could find the new data. He simply explodes in front of Rachel. Suddenly the tubes where the humans were have been turned off. Rachel remains motionless when the smoke clears. The protagonist looks at him calmly, as if he hadn't destroyed the entire experiment room. Rachel can't help but feel the overwhelming power in front of him. Machin just passes by him without saying a word and stops at the iron table. He looks sadly at Yang. Her arm has been amputated and her condition is serious. The protagonist coldly asked how Rachel did this to a child. It didn't take long for him to see all the inhabitants of Mount Hua trapped in the big tubes. Rachel is in shock when he is called a monster. The protagonist decides to end it soon and extends his hand in front of his body. Then he says that he refuses to talk to anything that is not human. Suddenly, the captain's sword flies into his hand and Rachel recognizes the technique. It is the manipulation of the void. He does not understand how his body can be afraid of a brat who does not even have internal energy, but Richel soon remembers that the manipulation of the void can only be performed by those who have reached the transcendent level. He comes to the conclusion that the rival is using ancient martial arts. This means that his Machin is someone who should not be underestimated. Richel knows not to face him in this condition. The protagonist interrupts his thoughts suddenly and puts the sword on his neck. While telling the guy not to think about useless things, Richel decides to make the first attack to gain the upper hand, but his arm is split in half. The protagonist's idea was to leave Richel as the captain. Now that his arm has been destroyed, the next step is to finish off his body. Machin's murderous aura is insane. Richel considers himself a guy with no luck. In a single day, he had to deal with a member of the Tang clan, and now there is a brat with overwhelming power. His defeat is clear, but Richel prefers to use all his internal energy than surrender. At that moment, the system warns that it is dangerous. Machin just wonders how a useless one can cause so much trouble. A low voice asks him to finish off Richel. The protagonist realizes that Yang is still alive. The captain says that Richel will use self-destruction to destroy them. Machin hadn't realized it in advance, and now there was no more time. For a second, he felt afraid and his eyes showed it. Suddenly, a loud explosion took over the experiment room. Meanwhile, outside, Robert realizes that his equipment has come to an end. There is nothing left to use against the robots. He regrets that he can no longer act. The robots continue the attack, so Robert decides to go without a suit and fight with his bare hands, but before he starts the melee attack, a strong light catches his attention. Robert realizes with fear there was an explosion in the capsule that the protagonist entered. The fire is so strong that it can be seen from space. Sung looks scared as he received the news of the large-scale electromagnetic field explosion on the moon of the planet Mount Hua. The investigator believes that an attack of this magnitude can only be caused by the military, so it's likely that the human government is involved. Sung just says to delete all the footage. They'll pretend they didn't see anything. Surely the investigator thinks this is absurd, but it can't go against the boss. The officer also saw the large-scale explosion. Meanwhile, Robert was desperate, thinking of the worst. He shouted Yang's name and ran to the place of the explosion. Robert finally arrives at the crater and stares blankly at a beam of light. He saw the protagonist alive, holding Yang in his arms, but his face was sad. In the following days, the old man showed the officer that the sprout had grown, meaning that Mount Hua has returned to normal. The people who were used as test subjects of the experiment have also returned to their everyday lives. They don't remember anything, as if it never happened. The old man asks if the officer can explain what happened. Dine believes that there was a kind of inversion of entropy, a technology that reconfigures time itself. The experiment is forbidden because it has the risk of creating multiverses, but Richel completed this technology and was able to use all the individuals in the experiment at once, in addition to being able to create unilateral teleportation. You can't deny that Richel was a genius, even with his horrible reputation. The old man thinks that humans should also be blamed for so much greed. They were the biggest sponsors of this incident. The elder asks if the scientist was eliminated. The officer said he didn't know. In that case, the old man thinks Richel is alive, so he orders Dine to finish off this man as soon as possible, and also destroy that unknown individual who uses the martial arts of his sect. Officer obeys and leaves. After everything returned to normal, the head of the Jaha Pavilion invited the protagonist to thank him personally. Jackson says that his daughter told him everything that happened. Mokin remembers the officer and says that there are many people involved in the incident that he doesn't know. The leader believes that they are just suspicions. Then the protagonist says that he will close his eyes and pretend that it never happened. Jackson is startled by those words when he realizes that the boy was able to read his thoughts. In addition, he noticed that the brat in front of him spoke about the terrible incident in a calm voice, as if he had not been affected by all that. Anyway, Jackson says that he just wants to keep the people of Mount Hua safe from now on. He also comments that he is used to being treated with respect since he reached the highest office. Machin's attitude is different. The protagonist just replies that this is how he lives life, making the leader think that the boy is acting like the absolute supreme being and doesn't care about belittling the world. Jackson, who knows his true identity. But the protagonist only advised him to keep his eyes closed, as he said he would do at the beginning. The quick conversation came to an end, but Machin decided to clear up a doubt before on his way out. He asked if the leader knew of any technology that could reconnect severed limbs. At that moment in the Sea's demon ship, Yum was placed inside a capsule to recover his arm. Sunja followed the process closely and nothing seemed to go right. Robert expected good news outside the room, but unfortunately he received the news that the captain's condition was terrible. At first he thought that Young had only lost his arm. However, Sunja told her that the woman's body was full of poison, a unique poison produced by the captain's own body. In this case, there is no way to find the antidote. Sunja tried to neutralize the poison and made the situation worse because it spread all over her body. Robert yells that they need to go to the big hospital. The girl thinks that this is not a good option because the hospital will not have the antidote either, and besides, the place is too far away. It may be that Yang will not be able to get there alive. It was sad news for Robert. Sunja just asked him to prepare for the match. She remembers that the captain wanted to be thrown into space with a shield after she passed away. Yang wanted to explore the universe forever, so Sunja promised that she would fulfill her last dream and save as much money as she could to buy a high-quality armor. Robert didn't expect this news and was visibly shaken. Sunja preferred to stay away from him at that moment. Apparently, the girl didn't have great feelings. Even so, she didn't hide her sadness, and even threw water on her own head. Suddenly, Sunja notices a huge ship next to her small ship. The matriarch's fortress was unmistakable. The destination was the planet Mount Hua, and she arrived there in one day. Juksun wondered what Kim was doing there. The Mount Hua security guard named Sanjin asked what he should do. Juksun believed that the matriarch was just passing through the planet. Then he ordered the security guard to let her free. But Sanjin has difficulty accepting the order because he thinks that this behavior of the matriarch disrespects their sect. The leader quickly says Mount Hua is in the process of reconstruction and growth. Avoiding conflicts with other sects is extremely necessary. He asks the man to accept this until the planet is well enough to fight back. Sanjin reluctantly obeys. At that moment, Kim enters the room where the captain's body is. She reveals that she came to have a conversation with the sect leader when she found out what had happened to Yang, so the woman offers to help fix it. The protagonist asks, surprised, if she can really replace the captain's arm. The matriarch says that fixing some limb is the easiest thing. It is really difficult to remove the toxic substance from her heart that is spread throughout her body. Machin says that this poison is only given to members of the Tang clan. No wonder the captain's explosive temper. Kim confirms that it is a technique of the Tang clan, and the protagonist kindly asks her to help the girl. He knows that he will have to do something in return for the matriarch and asks what she wants. Kim replies that she wants to find someone. Then she needs the protagonist to take her to that person. Machin notices the murderous aura in the woman's words. Coincidentally, he also met someone he wanted to murder, but her target is no longer alive. Kim says that Richel is still alive. The problem is that he hid in a much deeper place, so she asks for the protagonist's help. The scene changes to the disposal site of the military robots. In the government of humanity, a woman with silver hair walks to the capsule holding a towel, which spills water everywhere. The woman soon finds Richel and hugs him, then says she is happy for the return of his life. Richel looks without understanding who she is. The woman is a clone created by Kim. She introduces herself as Rachel, his vessel. He will understand when his memories return, and the love between them two. Richel is silent. Meanwhile, Kim shows the protagonist the place she thinks Richel is hiding. It is a place of disposal of robots. The only problem is that it is operated by the human government and is under the supervision of the planetary defense. Machin says that he has heard a bald child talk about it. Anyway, the woman thinks it will be difficult to reach the destination. The human government is an official entity, and they have a distant relationship with the world of martial arts. The protagonist says that the government hasn't changed his habit. Kim is curious because he always talks like he's thousands of years old. Machin says he doesn't want to waste time, so he asks her to get straight to the point. Kim says he needs the protagonist to divert attention from the planetary defense forces. At this moment, at the base of the planetary defense, Major Bernardo sees the destruction that the protagonist caused in the laboratory. Richel tells the commander that he erased all traces. Bernardo jokes that it seems that his tongue was not injured in the process, but he confesses that he is curious to know if Richel's tongue will still work so well in front of the project's investors. Maybe the scientists can't calm their anger when everyone finds out that the experiment base is gone. Richel tries to say that the project has not completely failed. With all the data collected, he can now proceed with the main project, the Iron Gangshi project. Richel soon ends the conversation and decides to leave with Rachel. But before the two go through the door, the Major suggests that Rachel stay and let him be relieved. Rachel can't help but feel angry hearing this. Bernardo says that he has been there for a long time and got bored. He says that Rachel can bring another woman to play with him. If that's the case, the scientist just says that he will consider it and leaves the room. The Major calls him a fool, mentally, for considering a robot to be a real human. Sometime later, Kim manages to enter Yang's consciousness. The captain complains that her memories are too dark. The matriarch justifies it by saying that these memories were already Yang's. But she hid it. The girl is silent. Kim warns that he came to get her, but Yang refuses to go because he wants to stay to protect the teleportation portal. The matriarch tries to say that it's all an illusion. The portal no longer exists. Yang is trapped in this illusion and refuses to go back to the normal world. Suddenly, the blade of Kim's sword goes through her body and she says that she will take Yang by force. At that moment, the captain finally wakes up and notices that she is trapped in the capsule. Kim recharges her inner energy, and while the girl puts on her clothes, the woman warns that her reimplanted arm will be uncomfortable for a while, so Yang must rest until everything stabilizes. The capital thanks her for the help and promises that she will pay the debt. She is informed that someone has already paid. After all, debts are shared between people of equal positions. Kim adds that Young is insignificant next to all her co-workers. She only recharged her energy because of one person. Young asks why she saved her, and the matriarch says that the girl is not qualified to ask this question. Kim goes back to talking about the difficulty of getting the poison out of the girl's heart. She finds the Tang clan too cruel for doing this to a child. Young observes the caterpillar trapped in a cup and asks the woman to return it to her heart. The poison is something in the family that should not be broken. The machine warns that all of Young's internal energy has been recharged. Kim then removes the cables attached to her body and says that the girl abandoned the poison the moment she used it, so there is no reason to return it. Unless Young wants to make an exchange, the matriarch suggests that the girl tell everything about Rachel and she will return the poison. Young widens his eyes when he remembers the scientist. Meanwhile, in the Jaha Pavilion, the protagonist was invited again by Jackson because the man wanted to repay what he did, but Machin says that a cup of tea is enough. The leader says that Mount Hua is not used to having debts. He then says that he will pay the debt with sincere advice. His advice is for the protagonist not to approach the matriarch of the Western Sky. She is a poisonous person who lives in the dark abyss and infects anyone around you. At that moment, Young was leaving the floating ship when he suddenly found Elena in the hallway. The captain does not greet her, so Elena tells the girl not to be happy for having survived. In the future, she will end her life. Young does not care about the threat and asks if they had any debt in the past. Elena says that now that her mother saved her, they are enemies. Young just ignores her, which makes Elena completely angry. Young also loses his temper and yells at the girl not to speak informally. Meanwhile, the protagonist thanks him for the advice he received. Jackson says that the woman is only using Machin for her own benefit. There is a legend that says that any man can be used by Kim when he meets her. Jackson says that he met her in his youth. Kim said that he wanted to have a child with him. The leader was engaged at that time and refused the request. But nowadays he regrets having done it. It is rumored that more than 100 men succumbed to her. They all provided their genes to Kim, but she abandoned them later, so her second nickname is Black Widow. The protagonist is surprised and assumes that she has many children. Jackson says that it is actually more than 100. Machin gets bug-eyed asking how old she is. The leader says that this woman doesn't go through the ordinary pregnancy. In fact, she uses the cultivation of genes to create them in test tubes, so she could even make 100 at once. Machin realizes that the world has really become strange, but he doesn't understand why the woman wants so many children. Jackson says that it seems that she wants to create a perfect being, but no copy has been able to achieve her goal. So the leader asks the protagonist to be careful. Machin stands up and says that it is a shame. He would have a child with the woman if she made her type. Jackson stands still. A little later on the steam ship, Robert hugs Young and celebrates his recovery. The captain asks him to be less excited. The hunter keeps saying that it's good to see her well. The woman can only pay attention to the protagonist eating. She says she heard he saved her. Machin remains silent. Then Young asked how much older he is than her, but the place was silent. As a way of thanking, the woman demands that Sunja prepare healthy food for Machin. However, he prefers to eat the same ultra-processed food as always and threatens to finish Young if she doesn't return it. As expected, the two start fighting. At that moment in the Heavenly Demon sect, Jong receives a video call. Kim warns that the protagonist has told his true identity. He voluntarily sealed himself in an underground stone chamber on Mount Hua about 2,000 years ago, on Earth. In addition, he calls himself the Supreme Celestial Demon. The scene changes to later in Rachel's new laboratory. Rachel warns that the data is stable. The maximum amount of energy cycles is 8.5. Higher than that could cause an explosion. Rachel says that it is perfect. Then he extends his hand forward and tells the object to come to his master, something like a chip, and flies to his hand. Sometime later at the Major's base, Rachel presents his Iron Gangshi project. The Major asks if he is joking. The man reminds him that the project was supposed to turn living human bodies into enhanced combat robots. They must be indistinguishable even when mixed with ordinary people and possess the ability to freely use superhuman martial arts. But that chip with legs doesn't look human. Rachel assures that it will soon look like a human. Suddenly, the chip jumps on the sergeant's face and enters his nose. The next moment, something surprising happens. That robotic chip takes over the sergeant's body and manipulates his actions. Rachel explains that this is an android parasite. It was specially designed to enter the human body, paralyzing the nerves of the brain and taking control of the central nervous system, meaning that it turns infected humans into living androids. The Major is shocked as Rachel says that the chip can release internal energy of up to 8.5 cycles. This will make the infected person become a master of martial arts with extreme skills. At that moment, the sergeant became a completely different person. His body became toned and he gained height. It seems that the scientist project worked this time, but the Major notices that the change made the sergeant scary and asks why he got like this. Rachel replies that it is because the genes are different from the experimental samples. In addition, the sergeant resisted the chip, hence the deformity. At that moment, the scientist orders the parasite to come out and the soldier falls to the ground. The Major finds everything very frightening. Rachel makes it clear that he wants to show the prototype to investors, but the man thinks it is absurd because the sponsors invested 500 million and probably will not accept this monstrosity as a result. The scientist guarantees that it will work perfectly when the chip recognizes the true owner. At that moment, he launches the parasite at the glass window and sends for the real owner. The Major is paralyzed when the thing goes through the window and flies into space. Rachel turns around and tells him to warn about the prototype and schedule a meeting tomorrow with investors. At the same moment on the Demon S ship, the parasite flies past while the protagonist has his back turned. Sunja asks the captain to give a new order. The woman becomes thoughtful. Robert warns that they are very close to the military robot disposal site that is run by the human government. He adds that any mistake will make them fugitive from the human government. Young says to prepare the landing capsule and asks everyone to stay there. She says that if things get worse, it is for them to run away, that she does not know her. After that, the captain walks up to the protagonist and says that only the two of them will go down, but Machin says that he will go alone. However, the woman reminds that she needs to control the capsule. Robert says that she is lying. So the captain reveals that she actually wants to settle the score with Rachel, but everyone is against her decision, and the protagonist says that the woman needs to stay alive to pay off the debt she owes to someone else. Young is silent as he says that she should forget the past. At that moment, the Major warns the investors that the prototype has been completed. Rachel intends to present them tomorrow, but the man makes it clear that there is a possibility of failure in the project. The eye on the panel seems to get angry with that statement and says that the project failed the moment they used the Mount Hua guinea pigs. It seems that the committee is investigating the situation, and they could be harmed if they discover the participation. Then the person on the other end says that this needs to be resolved quickly, regardless of whether the project works out or not. After these words, the call ends, and the Major regrets having teamed up with someone as despicable as Rachel. Suddenly, an alert sounded in the room warning that an intruder has crossed the border. The protagonist lands alone in the capsule. Kim was told that he was at the robot disposal site. While all this was happening, the parasite found its host's house. Unfortunately, it was in the Jaha Pavilion. Rin looked at the chip curiously, wondering what it was. At first, she thought it was an insect, but soon that terrifying thing jumped in her face. Back to the protagonist, Rachel receives the terrible news that his attacker is looking for him. The Major also followed his steps, but he was calm because no weapon had identified with the protagonist. In addition, the boy did not have his data registered, which made the man think he was just a beggar walking around. Even so, he gives the order for the protagonist to be eliminated. At the same moment, a robot appears in front of Machin. Suddenly, Rachel invades the Major's room and says that the brat is not someone he can handle. He yells at the man to implement all possible weapons. The Major thinks the scientist is exaggerating and tells the man to calm down. But at that moment, he saw the robot simply disappearing before getting close to Machin. Rochelle yells at the man to analyze the enemy's martial arts urgently. The Major is annoyed by the scientist touching his control panel without his permission. Rachel warns that any defense will be irrelevant and he won't be safe. After that, the guy decides to protect himself on his own. The Major that he is just an arrogant man. Suddenly, the system warns that the intruder is in the crosshairs. The commander orders the Tathagata Buddha to activate and finish him off at once. As chaos ensued at the Major's base, Rachel found the prototype's host. Rin walked calmly towards her. Then she warned the scientist that Rin had arrived and was going to take her to the ship. At the same moment, the protagonist is surprised by a whirlwind. Suddenly, he becomes giant and tries to suck the boy inside. The image of the Buddha appears inside. Then his hand tries to hit Machin as if it were an insect. The whirlpool continues around the Buddha and the Major thinks everything went well. He thinks Rachel freaks out for nothing. The man sits quietly in the chair when the alert notifies the danger. The protagonist simply passes through the Buddha's hand and jumps into the air. The Major looks at the scene in disbelief, while Machin wonders how violent. For him, this is nothing more than a forgery using the image of a supreme being. In the next attack, the protagonist decides to be more intense, so a hole appears in the enemy's hand. Then Machin's well-aimed blow hits the head of the false Buddha. The protagonist believes that although the attack was light, it is enough to stop the enemy. This time, a group of robots prepared for the confrontation. Rachel has seen this scene before and knows that it will not work. The system warns that it has identified the boy's technique. It is an advanced technique called Demon Heart Sura from the Celestial Demon sect. Rachel quickly has an idea and tries to talk to the Major. He says he wants to establish an emergency connection, but a voice says that Rachel cannot talk to anyone at the moment. The man identifies the voice within seconds. Kim appears behind him. Rachel tries to talk to her. and is scolded. He asks if the woman has forgotten about him. The scientist believes it is because his appearance has changed. After all, he lost half of his face in an experimental accident. In addition, his height and physique have increased a lot since they last saw each other. Rachel asks if Kim was that person who 25 years ago went to his experiment laboratory. At that time, the matriarch said that he was a scientist with the greatest talent in history and also had a good look, so she asked them to have a child. Rochelle remembers the past and asks if now she remembers him. Suddenly, a sword appears in Kim's hand, and she says she hates these memories. Meanwhile, the Major receives the terrible news that 73% of the robot's strength has been lost. He stands still and doesn't know what to do. The next moment, the glass window behind him is broken. The protagonist walks next to the man as if he had done nothing. Major asks who he is, and Machin introduces himself. Despite knowing that his name is already written in the report, the protagonist is direct and says that he came to find that deformed monster. At the same moment, Rachel tries to tell Kim that he is not a failure as she imagines. The scientist says that he knew her desire to create a perfect being, so he accuses the woman of failing to leave him. Together, they could have created the perfect being she wanted so much. Before the man finishes talking, the matriarch's blade hits him. She coldly says that she remembers him, but this is a negative point, because she really wanted to forget his existence. A few minutes later, the protagonist finds the scientist's hideout, but when he enters, he already finds the man's body lying on the ground. Machin knew that Kim would do the job if he arrived first. He realizes that the cut was clean. Without any trace of hesitation, it seems that she showed no mercy. Suddenly, the scientist asks the protagonist not to talk like that. He believes that Kim just didn't recognize his worth. For some reason, the man thinks that this will change in the future, and she will remember him as someone valuable. Machin only advises him to accept his end and pass away soon. Rachel says that things will not end when he turns into a corpse. His teachings will continue forever. At that moment, Rachel appears with Rin. The idol quickly makes the protagonist worried. He runs to him, and suddenly a golden beam of light almost blinds him. The Major is alerted to a much greater danger. The system warns that the escape ship is ready, and he must retreat now. The Major finds that request strange, because at no time did he order an evacuation ship. Another voice says that she was the one who asked for the ship to be prepared as a thank you for the old days. The man knows that voice. The red-haired girl says that if he wants to stay here as a soldier and live his last moments, she won't force him to enter the ship. The fortress was so big that the hunters of the Demon-S ship were shocked. Sonja says that this thing appeared due to a teleportation. The captain is surprised because it is a very large fortress. Suddenly, she realizes with fear that it is the ship of the human government. Meanwhile, at the last moment, the protagonist managed to dodge the light that fled from Rin's body. He doesn't understand what happened and asks what the hell did the scientist do. Rachel replies that now this child is an empty vessel. He can't absorb anything until he reaches the peak of his strength. Rachel asks the master to stay still so that he can receive the treatment, but the scientist says that it won't last long. He pierces his own chest, saying that he will let her live free. Rachel is worried. The count hands her a heart pendant and says that now this child also belongs to her. The pendant falls to the ground, and the silence in the place is absolute, until Rachel decides to take the gift she received. But before the protagonist tells her to stand still and return the child to her original state, Rachel says that he doesn't have to worry because her life is also over. Anyway, the boss's last request must be accepted, so the woman takes the pendant and goes to Rin. Rachel hugs the idol. In her last words, she asked Rin to hug her again in case they met in the future. After that, Rachel disappeared. The protagonist hesitates to go to the idol. Suddenly, Rin falls to the ground. Meanwhile, the bounty hunters keep talking about the huge fortress. He has already found out that it belongs to the human government. Now they want to know what this thing intends to do. Robert thinks he is going to start a bombardment, then shouts that he is doomed. Young says that the ship is not even moving. Maybe they are not the target or have not been seen, just like an elephant can't see a mouse by its paws. Sonja doesn't like the analogy to say that they are too small. In addition, she is sure that they have already been seen. At that moment, the red-haired woman teleports into the Demon-S ship, leaving everyone terrified. The woman speaks directly to Yang, asking if she is the last descendant of the Sichuan Tang family. The captain fears the worst, so the woman explains that she doesn't need to worry because she will pretend that she didn't see anyone from this ship. The report on Yang has also been deleted. At this point, the woman contacts someone from the human government and says that it is an emergency report to the committee. She presents the results of the investigation into the disposal of the Alpha robot to solve the current situation. She recommends Operation Plan 6. Yang soon asks Sunjae if there is chaos going on down there involving all robots. Sunja says that, in fact, all robots have been shut down. At that moment, Operation Plan 6 is authorized. The use of orbital bombardment and all further operations are at the discretion of the commander on site. The red-haired woman thanks her, then she smiles gently and says that everything has been resolved. Then the woman of the order for the destruction to begin. The fortress of the human government launches a precise laser at a specific point, leaving a screw stuck to the ground. The red-haired woman soon tells the S-demon ship to hurry. They need to move away about half a light year in 5 minutes to be safe. Before leaving, the woman says that she does not intend to find them again. Soon after she disappears, Young is motionless as if she had been frozen. On the other hand, Robert shouts that this woman is crazy and they will not have time to avoid destruction. The captain asks what orbital bombardment means. Sunja replies that it is a weapon that can annihilate entire moons or planets. She thought it was nothing more than rumors, but it seems that there really is something like this. By now, the core of the moon must be close to being pierced. Sunja says that they have 3 minutes to escape. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman receives the information that the core of the moon has been hit. She gives a smile and orders it to detonate. The ground begins to shake and now emerges. The time for the explosion is now 2 minutes. The red-haired woman orders the activation of the shields of the fortress of the human government. Her request is obeyed. Then she decides to get out of there as soon as possible. The Major is in control of the ship. As he distances himself from the moon, the woman realizes that the Demon S ship is still in the same place, as if it could not make the situation worse for the bounty hunters. Instead of traveling in the opposite direction to the moon, the captain decides to go get the protagonist before everything explodes. Robert is sure that there will be no time, and they will all be exterminated. Young says that she has already looked at her handline and will certainly live many years. Sunja replies that she has no lines in her hands, but the system says that she will live a long and healthy life until she is 5,000 years old. While the moon was getting completely deformed, the S-Demon ship flew in search of Machin. They quickly pass through the wreckage when Sunja realizes that the explosion has already started in the core of the moon. Robert says that he did not want to be baked. Yang assures that no one will be hurt. Sunja soon finds the protagonist's vital sign, but perhaps the heat has already taken over him. At that moment, Machin flies in the sky with Rin in his arms. His clothes were burned, but that wasn't the biggest problem. Suddenly, a monster emerged from the earth and looked at him fiercely. There are still signs of fire on the protagonist's body, and he says that today is not a good day to face him. Maybe if these monsters had appeared yesterday, he would have a more dignified ending, but today Machin is not in a good mood, mainly because he promised that he would protect Rin. At that moment, the protagonist spots the S-Demon ship and flies towards it. The red-haired woman is notified that there is still a sign of life on the moon. She says that it is useless. The ambient temperature will rise to over 6,000 degrees when the core detonates completely. Not even a god would survive such pressure. At that moment, Young shouts that the protagonist is near. Sunja says that she can't open the door. The outside temperature is above 2000 degrees. Machin manages to enter an unknown fortress with the flaming body. The next moment, the moon is destroyed. The strong explosion in the universe can be seen from afar. Meanwhile, in the unknown fortress, a person calmly walks towards Machin. He says that he did not expect to see the monk again. The man replies that he knew that fate would do the job, even if it took 2,000 years.